Tabletop is brought to you by the following sponsor.
Are you looking for something comfortable to wear and keep your brain warm while playing tabletop games? Daily Dose of Yarn makes handmade, customized beanies for all of your style and comfort needs. She can even help you with a custom beanie to represent your favorite character. Check out Daily Dose of Yarn on Instagram and Etsy to order your new favorite beanie today.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Tabletop. This is another bonus episode. I'm your host, Nick, and today I have with me...
Daniel from Coronor.
And Shade from your backyard.
Great. I'm so glad you're both here. We're going to do another homebrew sitting on a stool.
I love that we did not come up with a name in the 3 weeks between recordings.
Yeah.
I heard that you wanted me to think of that,
Yes,
and I did not think of it.
Okay,
Sorry.
great. Shade, Shade did not come through this time, which is actually pretty irregular. I'm starting to panic, but I guess What's Brewing will stay as our title. Today we're going to be talking about items, homebrewing items, crafting rules, things like that to add into a campaign. Why don't we start with you guys? What's your idea? Because you guys have been making homebrew stuff forever. So what is the do's and don'ts?
Do it. Don't overdo it.
Oh my. Okay.
So that's I like that. I want to get into it, but I want to ask a question. Why do it?
I like to do it. I'm going to stop using the phrase do it. I'm going to start saying the full sentence.
Yeah,
I like
do it.
crafting my own items for world building because I think it just gives it a little bit extra personality. And by having your own special thing, it's also player investment into their characters and what they have going on.
Yeah.
Love it. And I would agree. I think that's, for me, why I homebrew any items, anything at all, really, is to make it that unique, get it that flavor and tone that you really want. And one of the cool things about most TTRPG systems, but I'll stick with 5e, D&D, and Powered by the Apocalypse, they both offer resources for creating that. Chapter 9 of the Dungeon Master's Guide has specific outlines on how to create magic items, and Xanthar's Guide to Everything, Chapter 2, has some good stuff on downtime activities. So one of those is including players creating magic items, and there's no reason those can't be homebrewed as well. So the resources are there. They're empowering you to do it. Why not?
Yeah, Empowered by the Apocalypse, it really is also just... Since Powered by the Apocalypse is so much looser, there's just a bunch of tags in the manuals where you add things like loud or messy or reliable or magic or whatever to a weapon, and then that narratively comes into play. So you can make like in Lakewood, you had a sword that was silvered as a tag, and also that it had people... just kind of it rolled off of their memory, so It was like forgettable or something like that.
Yeah, I forget what it was like unobserved or something.
Yeah.
So I mean, the tools are there, and at the end of the day, these systems are all about bringing ideas to life, and this is just one more way that you can bring those ideas to life. So I'm glad that we talked about that, but I want to know, you said don't overdo it. What do you mean?
With making your own gear and investing in all of that, there's a chance to where like you don't want the items to overshine the players themselves. You don't want the items to be
more valuable than the lives of their characters.
Exactly. Well,
they're like, I have Excalibur. I cannot let the goblin break.
I mean,
this.
you don't want Mjolnir to be more impressive than Thor is. Like they're iconic as a duo, but the hammer can be thrown. The hammer charges lightning, but Thor's the character. But if Thor was just a combination of a hat, his helmet, a magic cloak, boots, like what is the character at that point other than just Iron Man?
Well, but that's the thing is that like Iron Man is a character that is defined by the things that he uses and wears, and there's still like a character there. What if somebody comes up to you and is like, I want my character, maybe it's like a warforged or maybe it's an artificer, and you're just like, hey, I want my character to kind of be defined by the things that they have or create. Like, how do you balance that and make it still okay?
Well, that would be great if they're the only person doing that. Okay. That's an interesting concept if you're aiming for that concept, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, like, so here's, I'm going to jump into the devil role, and I'll try to bring something that I hear a lot, which is sort of, but everything that you make is going to be unbalanced. It's not going to work. It's going to destroy the story and things like that. How do you guys respond?
Another reason why not to overdo personal item creation, because I have done that in my first campaign I was running with my current group, the Thorns of Dead Nettle.
Let's get a clean audio on that. Let's try one more time.
The Thorns of Dead Nettle.
There you go.
I was giving them a bunch of like powerful tools and stuff to use, and it got to the point where it was like they could just switch out gear halfway through like on an adventure and be ready to like go again with like full charges. So I had to like destroy everything to rebalance the game. And of course, that embittered a lot of people and was not a popular move.
I have to say that one of my first D&D like memories is standing out on the plaza where we worked, and you being like, "Yeah, I'm gonna make some item killer grenades that this magic person's gonna throw at them." And I'm like, "Man, that makes me think they're gonna be really mad at you." And you're like, "Yeah, I'll be fine."
Yeah. And they were, and I was.
Yeah, I mean, in the long run. But I think that's, perfectly valid. We live in a world now that's all about editorializing. And if you're playing any kind of game, I guarantee, especially if it's a living game, like a video game or something like that, nerfs are not something you're unfamiliar with. Yeah. You should be ready to understand that, hey, sometimes things need to be rebalanced. You can do it in a narrative sense. You know, you can start that quest of, oh no, the item's broken, so it only kind of works the way it used to, but maybe you can go on this grand epic quest, heroes, to fix it. And then by the time they're level 20, having that thing be a god killer doesn't matter anymore. Because they are already that. Getting back to you want them to also be impressive. Or you could just take them aside as reasonable colleagues and say, hey guys,
when has that ever worked?
Well, that's always going to be my one piece of advice, is just talk to people, damn it. Take them aside and say, hey guys, I'm a fallible human, and I know that you love this item, but frankly, I wrote myself into a corner, and I need to be able to do things. I want to retool this, and that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah. And that, you need to do that sometimes. That's another reason, though, why you should, again, keep it to a minimum so that those reworkings can happen a lot easier than if you have to rework, 2 items per character, and it's like a large party of 7 or 8 people.
Yeah. My sort of feeling on item creation and things like that is that for me, it completely depends on rule of cool. And I will probably never in any of my games
allow people to just sort of make a weapon that's very powerful because they need more power. I almost always think of items when I play as a player as a way to express my character's life or something through what they're using and what they wear and things like that. So like in our most recent game, Daniel, I have a paladin character, and we went on this sort of like long, arduous process to get this item because I sort of just wanted a hammer that had a chainsaw in it. And it is a good item in that it does have some extra things that are fun, and I paid a hefty price to get it. But basically all it does is allow that if I connect with someone, that it kind of auto grapples them, and if they don't remove it, I can just keep pushing it through as like a chainsaw would to do some extra weapon damage, which is just really cool flavor. And also it just like, now I can start up a chainsaw in like normal RP situations, which is always fun.
Yeah, which kind of brings up a rule of thumb when I'm making magic items, is that they shouldn't have like a big super cinematic effect, but it should be like a fun character gimmick made real. like the chainsaw hammer is an interesting trait, but it's not game breaking. Like grappling an opponent when you hit them with a chainsaw blade isn't going to ruin it, especially since like we gave it a pretty easy escape DC. So it's like they're not going to be stuck indefinitely.
It just makes them have to deal with it.
It just makes it have to deal, and it gives your character a way to stand out in the world. Like no other paladin has a chain hammer. A chain blade or whatever we called it. And then another game, your character also has like a very gimmicky dagger, and I think when people,
I love a gimmick way more than a +3 or anything.
Yeah, a +3 or this weapon does 4d6 extra fire damage. But like, yeah, those numbers will like, if you're like a power gamer or you're metagaming, those are like good to have. But something flashy that's like, oh, my character does this neat trick really well. Those daggers that Bill has are a pair that teleport to each other when they're separated. And if you're holding one, you go along for the ride.
Yeah, so either I can call a dagger back to my hand or I can go to the dagger, which is like a very cool for like a rogue who doesn't have magic. Like, it's a teleport spell, which is really fucking fun.
It's a way to keep the rogue moving. Which can be game breaking if the rogue can just like use those daggers to jump around a battlefield and get like into sneak attack range.
Yeah,
but that also eats up his bonus action, if I recall correctly, which
or
is
reaction or whatever it was. Yeah,
right.
Bonus. Yeah.
Bonus action.
Bonus. And that's important for balancing. So you want to, when you're creating items, especially like in D&D, you really want to look at. This needs to eat up a resource. A lot of magic items in D&D kind of have charges and things like that, and you get so many charges back at a long rest or at the beginning of dawn, yada, yada, yada. And that's all fine and well. Those are good resources that should maybe exist, but you might also want to think about the action economy resources like that. So this rogue is now teleporting. That means he can't then take the hide bonus action or the disengage bonus action, but he also doesn't...
dash.
Or the dash. Yeah. But this also achieves two of those things anyway, because it's dash and disengage on its own in many regards.
And it also allows me to like throw a dagger into the dirt and then jump off a cliff to try to like Balrog kill something and then teleport back before I hit the bottom.
Theoretically.
It's been used imaginatively a couple of times.
Yeah.
I will say though that one thing that you did shade in the beginning of Waterdeep, which I still think is one of the better items that I've ever received, was also sort of a gimmicky item. And it doesn't eat any resources, but it also doesn't give you anything other than the mental image of the Assassin's Creed or like the Sherlock Holmes like pistol that comes out into your hand. They're hand crossbows that are in bracelets that just sort of like appear in the hand and then go back into the bracelets as like little mechanical things, and allows him to hide them. And also I think that you gave me the blessing of not having to count ammo because I hate that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and those were born out of two things. One, you expressed an interest in that kind of thing, being able to conceal your weapon, as well as not have to count the ammo. But two, all I did for that was look at the many magic items that already exist in published material. In fact, I think it's in the Waterdeep book. It's it's a dagger. It's a dagger that does pretty much the exact same thing, if memory serves. But I just went, well, this can be crossbows, hand crossbows instead. And you can, homebrewing doesn't have to be creating something wholly from scratch. You can use things and reflavor them, repurpose them. And I really do strongly encourage that, because no doubt you're very creative, but creativity should never be in a vacuum. Look for inspiration.
One thing along those lines that I want to touch on as well are like storyline items, things that are supposed to be like very powerful or like plot moving items. Like, how do you go about building those if you're either a newer GM or you're somebody who just hasn't really done that specific thing before? You have always taken one of the wondrous or like legendary items out of the book, and now you're trying to do it for yourself. How do you make it be like a very important item narratively that you want to feel powerful and interesting without just completely destroying your game?
Very carefully.
So I will say you should be prepared that if this is really supposed to be the MacGuffin, the thing that's going to fix all problems and solve everything, you should just be prepared to accept that it may feel overpowered, and you should try and make it situational where you can. So maybe this is going to be the sword that takes down the dragon. That doesn't mean it has to kill every dragon.
Yeah.
It just has to be able to kill that dragon.
Right.
And that's one way to kind of balance that a little bit better, is just make it situational.
Right. Also, make it where it'd be too powerful for the players to keep past a certain point in the story or a certain plot point, where it makes more sense after they've used it to hide it away somewhere where it can't fall into the wrong hands. Like having a Thieves Guild be aware of it. And if you're carrying around, say you have the sword Excalibur.
Yeah.
And you have that, people are going to know that you have that, and they're going to be constantly trying to take it away from you.
Yeah.
So you can just annoy your players into giving up the more powerful items because they're so well known that they can't walk around without being accosted everywhere they go.
You can even take that a step further and say that the item simply vanishes. It was put here by...
Has a purpose.
It has a purpose, yeah.
Yeah. Dragon Ball rules. You've got your wish. Now they're going to be stoned for a century and disappear all over the world again.
Yeah, I was building a short thing where it was kind of demon inspired, and that you'd have to be in the underworld and figure out stuff there. And I was thinking that it would be an interesting homebrewed item that there's like a sword or something that kills demons and is like very good at it, but only if you know the demon's name. So you'd have to then do the RP work or whatever, or research of finding out this demon's true name or whatever before you want to confront it with the item, because otherwise it's just a sword that doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like a normal, very cool weapon.
I mean, and you can even still give it maybe that +1 aspect or something small.
Yeah.
But I think balancing the major traits and the minor traits on a magic item can really help round it out. You can also simply curse the item. You know, the one ring is very powerful, right? But it also warps your mind and turns you into a shadow of yourself. So you don't necessarily want to use that too much. You could give the item, you can make it sentient. You said annoy your players, Daniel. Boy, annoy them. Make it a sentient item, and every time they do something it doesn't agree with, make them pay for that with this annoying NPC.
Also, I love when you give characters sentient items, and honestly, I would sometimes love for a DM to give me a sentient item that just is like, hey, you get to control an NPC. Like, it doesn't do anything other than, like, you have another character to talk to kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like story hooks. It's sort of like in Taz Amnesty with the...
Doc Newton.
Yeah, Doc Newton. Eat my whole ass.
I had forgotten about Doc Newton's magical talking sword.
Yeah.
Belt sword. One other thing I wanted to touch on this topic specifically too was item crafting, because I know a lot of people, especially now with like The Witcher and all the other open world RPGs out there, Elden Ring even has it. Like a crafting system is something that a lot of players really crave. And I was just wondering if you guys have ever found success with a item crafting system in your games.
I have tried to put one together, but I find that that's something that's easier run with like a computer system, like in a video game world, in which like there's a computer keeping track of how all the pieces interact with each other. Otherwise, you just have to have your players have tables and tables of this is what you need, these components do this, and all of that. And it gets hard to manage a crafting system when you're playing a couple of hours a week or every other week.
Yeah, I think, and I mentioned kind of at the top here, Xanthar's Guide to Everything specifically has a section on downtime revisited is what it's called for Chapter 2. And obviously the player handbook and I think the DMG both have downtime stuff. And they all talk about crafting items. There are some good resources there on how to handle that, but the key is it's a downtime activity. And downtime, really that could be its own episode, because Some groups really run downtime. Some groups are interested in it. Others, they don't want to waste a lot of time with that. They want to get back to the adventure. Oh, we're going to do a shopping episode? No, I'm just going to kind of zone out. Or, we're just supposed to kind of say what we're doing and there's no quest.
Yeah, right.
Some people aren't ready to kind of do that improvisational thing.
Or they don't trust you and they think there's going to be a trick if they say something.
I totally agree with both of those things. I think that for me, I've done two separate things. One, which was I gave at the top of an adventure 3 things within the adventure, which would usually last 1 or 2 episodes or like sessions. They would have to hit 3 different kind of difficult in-game moments where they would have to do something that was not in their best interest, or they would have to collect a weird item that they had to kind of keep in the back of their mind, and they were always a little bit cryptic, and they had to just kind of figure it out. And if they had all 3, then they could use those to kind of make a item that they were interested in. And so that was a way for me to be like, oh, I can get my characters to be way more attentive and invested in the story by being like, we have to find like we have to grab the bull by its horns. What does that mean? And then they find like a police officer with a bull on his belt, and they're like, okay, we have to steal his belt or whatever. Which was, I think, very fun for me anyway, because it made you guys do some stupid stuff, which is great.
Yep.
And then the other thing that I would suggest doing, if you're really wanting to make a crafting system, you can always like pawn the actual crafting of the items off onto NPCs and just have your characters collect stuff. Yep. Like, hey, you just got a bunch of dragon bone that in this world, there's certain armors that can be made out of that. And then you can bring it to a blacksmith and leave it there for a while.
And that's a tried and true thing. And that's one of the ones that I was hoping to also speak on, because I've certainly had success with that. They know an artificer. That artificer can handle this. They just need XYZ items. And they should usually be kind of hard to obtain. It shouldn't be, I need you to collect 10 flowers in the field, adventurer. It should be a quest. Yeah,
but I would also say, like, if you as a DM don't have an interest in this, then you should be pretty clear about that as well. Like, you should just say, like, hey, this blacksmith doesn't know how to fucking do that. Like,
it should definitely be a session 0 conversation.
Sure,
like, you guys can kill the monster if you want to, but if you try to, like, collect its bones and scales, I have nothing for you.
Yeah.
Or, we want to do this. Will you give us items? And that way the DM has time to prepare instead of like, I can't think. What would you have a scale for?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you can kind of, because maybe that doesn't happen at session 0. I had a player who, at no point was that really expressed as an interest necessarily, but he just started collecting really trophies.
Yeah.
And I kind of started thinking, man, he has a lot of just trophies on him. What can I do to make that a little more exciting? And that challenged me as a DM to later go on and say, okay, let's figure some of this out. Let's start rewarding some of this creativity of the player. But maybe,
it could be like the Red Dead talismans, where it's like, hey, you went out and you hunted all these legendary monsters. Now, like, it's just like this little Dreamcatcher-esque thing that hangs from your horse, but also it makes it so that ghosts can't get into you while you're sleeping or whatever.
Yeah. And, I think it's just the willingness to know your own limits, but also still be able to say yes where you can.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for talking item crafting and homebrewing items. Anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Did we say crafting table?
Crafting table? Oh, no, we haven't. Crafting table.
I mean, for the
Minecraft fans.
No, but for the well, yeah, I mean, sure, Minecraft fans, but I mean, for the segment.
Oh, crafting table.
Was that ever pitched?
No, I think we skipped right over the obvious kind of table it could be.
Oh man, it's like at the workbench or something. Yeah. At the crafting table. Homebrew items.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
We did it.
There we go. We got.
Did we? I don't know. We're still shopping around.
All right.
But I think that we can rock tumble this and come up
Yeah.
with a good one. I think we're closer than we've ever been before. So
One day, dear listener, we'll name this segment.
Or it will just continuously change throughout
And we'll
the
make a
years.
promise every single time.
All right. See you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.